Welcome to the Pewsey Vale in Wiltshire. My name is Paul Oakley and I run oil painting courses at Pewsey Vale Studios. This demonstration is to show a simple technique for painting clouds. We're not talking big stormy clouds, but for clouds you might find on a summer's day within an otherwise blue sky. This method of painting is relatively quick and could work well if you're a plein air painter and need a sky to work with your landscape. If you enjoy painting the sky and would like to be notified when further demonstrations come online, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. This demonstration is going to be about painting a beautiful summer sky. So we want a sky with a nice blue colour to it and just a few white clouds scudding across it, but the sort of day you want to be out and about in. So we're going to be using a small number of colours. We've got our main blues are going to be French ultramarine and cerulean blue. We've got some raw sienna, titanium white and a little bit of alizarin crimson, just to give a bit of a purpley bottom to those clouds that we've got in the sky. We're painting on a sheet of 4mm MDF with an acrylic gesso across it, and we're going to be using a couple of hog brushes and a varnish brush just to get an initial layer of colour down. We're also going to be using some odourless mineral spirit just to clean the brushes and to thin the paint. So let's get on with the painting. I'm going to start off by putting a colour beginning right across the board. So I'm going to be using a little bit of my cerulean, and I'm going to do this off the camera because the paint's going to get too thin and would run everywhere if I did it on the palette in front of you. So that little bit of raw sienna, and I'm just going to thin that down with my mineral spirits. A bit more of the raw sienna. No white at this stage. I just want to get a basic layer of colour down across my board, so a blue beginning. So I've really thinned that down quite a lot. I've got a varnish brush here, but you could put this on with any brush you like. It's just quite nice with a fairly fat brush to get that colour down. And I'm just taking those brush strokes horizontally across the board. I'm going to be painting the sky horizontally, so with brush strokes running this way across. So most of this colour is going to be covered up, but if it does show through, it's not going to run in the opposite way to most of the brush strokes I'm putting on. So we'll just get that down. At the moment I'm not really worried about where my cloud's going to go. I'm going to think about that in a minute and draw them on, but I want to get this colour beginning across the whole board to start with, and then I'm going to start to do a bit of planning as to where the cloud's going to sit and how I'm going to put my sky in the picture. So we'll just finish running that across. Nice bit of thin down paint, and we'll get that over, and there we are. We've got our first layer of colour down, our basis for the sky, and we're off and running. You can see from the board that I've just added a bit of an idea as to where I want my clouds to be. So the sky is going to be blue, it's going to be darker at the top and lightness it comes down towards the horizon. So it's a sky demonstration, so I'm just going to put a line in just to show where the horizon is, so you can get a feel for how that sky runs down into the land it's above. So what I want to do is to paint the sky in. I'm going to leave the areas where the cloud's going to be, but I'm going to sort of take the paint into the edge of them so they can blend out. What I don't want us to have to do is to paint the sky back in around the clouds once I put them on. So I'm going to be using my French ultramarine and cerulean blue for my sky. It's going to get lighter towards the horizon. A little bit of raw sienna in there. If you put those colours on neat, they're going to look too bright and not really look like a proper sky colour. And obviously we're going to use some white that's going to thin those colours down a bit as well. So we'll start off with the top of the sky. Generally start with the top. I've got quite a chunky flat hog brush, and we're going to start mixing some colour up on our palette just to start this sky off. So I've got my French ultramarine, adding some white to that, and then a little bit of raw sienna because I want a more natural colour sky, and obviously the orange of the raw sienna is a complement to the blue. So we're just going to get a slightly more natural sky colour. And I'm going to start putting this on top of the colour I've got underneath, that initial layer of colour we put down. And there's going to be places where that shows through. It's going to give a bit more depth and interest to the sky. And what I'd like to do is just to add little bits of the colour in as I go along. So maybe a little bit more of the French ultramarine on this side, on the right hand side. Perhaps a bit more of the raw sienna as we go across. A bit more of the white just to give it a slightly different shade, maybe a slightly more browny shade. Just to give some interest to the sky. That's going to blend in across. A bit more of the French ultramarine perhaps. Over here. And now I'm just going to go where I've got my clouds marked. I'm not going to worry too much about going exactly around them. I'm going to just take the paint in a bit. Obviously the clouds can be, don't need to be exactly the shape I've drawn. It's just an idea of where they are. So I'm just going to take my paint into the edge of these, and I can bring the paint of the clouds back out into the sky beyond as we go along. So just keeping those brush strokes horizontal across the board. I want the sky to be fairly uniform in the way it's painted. There's quite often, there are occasions where you might want to take your brush strokes vertically, maybe with a more stormy sky, but we want a sort of fairly tranquil sky for this picture, so we're just going to take the brush strokes horizontally across. So I'm going to start adding a little bit more white now to my sky, just to lighten it up a bit as we come down. Again, conscious of where my clouds are. I've got a nice mix of blues already in the sky, just from mixing these colours together a bit. And as we get lower, I'm going to start to introduce some of my cerulean blue, because I want to lighter towards the horizon. Obviously by going lighter towards the horizon and a slightly cooler blue, it gives you that feel of distance. So we've still got a little bit of that raw sienna in there. And it's just going to give us this idea of the sky going down towards the horizon. So it's just going to lighten up a bit. So by using my cerulean and obviously a bit more white as I go along, we're really going to lighten that up a bit. But I still want it to be a dark enough blue for these clouds to stand out against it. So again, just making sure I'm leaving somewhere for these clouds to fit in later on. And I'm just going to take that paint just over the horizon, and we'll just put that in just to give it a little indication as to where that sits on the board. Just getting that in, just go around these clouds, leaving them in place, and we've got a lot of the sky done already. Look at that. The trick with this is don't take too long over it, just mix the paint as you go along so you get some nice interest in the colours of the sky. The sky is generally not usually one uniform blue. It's going to get lighter as you go down towards the horizon, and that blue is going to change to a cooler blue as you get down there. So even a little bit more white there, just to give that a bit more of a change, and I might just add a bit more of that as I go across. And just keeping, if you get some nice brush strokes, just leave them in, because we've got some cloud going across there. And I'm just going to put a bit of a line of, just going to mix some French ultramarine with a little bit of alizarin, give a slightly purpley colour. Just to get an idea of where this horizon is going to be. So I'm not painting any particular landscape in at this point, just popping a line in just to give an idea as to where the horizon is. little hill, a little flat bit next to it. Just a few random marks just to give an idea as to something going on in the foreground here. And there we go, there's the first layer of paint done. We've got our sky mainly in, darker at the top, lighter as it comes down towards the horizon. We've got those areas of cloud left blank at the moment, so we can start to fill those in as the next stage of the painting. For this next stage of the painting, I want to put the base of the clouds in. So they're going to have a fairly sort of creamy white top, but they need to be rounded, so we want to have some colour underneath them. So I'm going to start off with a bit of raw sand. I've got a slightly smaller brush here, again another flat hog brush. A little bit of my French ultramarine and a little bit of white. Just creating a sort of a slightly browny grey underneath colour for these clouds. Don't want it to be too dark, but I want the creamy tops of them to really quite stand out. So I'm just going to start to introduce this to my painting. Maybe a little bit more of the raw sienna. So all I'm going to do is just to, where we've got these clouds marked in, just to start to give a bit of an idea of the underneath of the cloud. And you see, I'm not worrying too much about the lines I've got, there. I want to sort of paint over them. And I'm just using the brush very loosely, not really thinking about the painting wispy clouds, but just dragging the brush across just to give an idea of this sort of base of the cloud. So covering up my pencil lines, even just taking those clouds a little bit into the blue beyond, just with some marks there. Maybe a little bit more of the blue as we get further away. So with these, because these clouds are a bit further into the distance, maybe a bit less detail, just a couple of little quick brush strokes just to give an idea as to where they are. And again, just some marks just to give an idea of some further cloud. Perhaps we can just touch that in with some white later on. And I'm going to do the same with these, a couple of higher clouds, maybe a little bit more of my raw sienna. This is obviously a slightly bigger cloud, so just going to drop that in there. I just pop those lines in, then we've got this other smaller one going on here. And again, maybe just a few marks going off into that sky we've got there. It looks like that sky might need to be a little bit darker at the top, so we'll just fiddle with that in a minute. I'm going to add some more white to this mix. This isn't going to be my final layer of paint. These clouds are going to be maybe painted in about 3 different stages. But I want to get another sort of mid-range cloud colour going in, so we'll start with the same cloud. And again, just I don't want to lose the colour I've got underneath, but I'm quite happy just to blend these brush marks back into it. And again, just holding the brush very loosely, taking it horizontally across, and just with some rough brush marks, just give an idea to how these clouds sit. But remember, we're going to go in with another layer of colour, sort of brighter colour, just to finish them off. So we're just going to get this in loosely at this stage. And again, on these more distant ones, this might be all we do, because we want a bit of a contrast in terms of lightness of touch of these. So we might just add a few little bits of this lighter colour in for these far distant clouds. Break them up a little bit perhaps. Maybe a hint of it over here. And then maybe a little bit lighter, perhaps maybe a little bit of my cerulean in for these clouds that are the largest ones on my picture. So just keeping those brush strokes nice and horizontal as you go across. Again, change the colours a little bit if you want to as you go along. Again, just some idea of cloud going up there at this stage. So that's the next stage. I'm just going to add a little bit more blue to my at the top of the picture. I think it needs to be a little bit darker, and then we're going to come back and finish the clouds off in a moment or two. Now I've started to get my clouds in place, just looking over the whole picture. There's a couple of things I want to do. Darken up the top of the sky a little bit, and maybe lighten it up towards the horizon, so we've got a slightly greater contrast across the sky. Introduce a few more little shadow areas, maybe underneath the clouds, and then we'll go back in with the final highlight. So for this top section of the sky, we're going back to our French ultramarine. Remember, a little bit of raw sienna and some white. Going to darken this up just a little bit, obviously painting into wet paint, so it's just going to blend in with that colour I've got there already. But just have some, going back to my bigger brush, just some fairly loose brush strokes. Quite happy for those to stand out against the colour I've got underneath. Again, just to give an indication of maybe some darker part of the sky at the top, and perhaps some light clouds below them. So we'll just get that in there. Just blend that down as the paint runs off the brush. Just your chance to fiddle about, give your sky a bit more interest perhaps. Just blend that out. And then we're going to do the same with the lower part of the sky where we've got this horizon going on. We're just going to make that a bit lighter. So we've got our cerulean and white, little bit of raw sienna. I'm just going to really lighten this up with my titanium white. Just start to take this, again it almost looks like some scuddy cloud going across the bottom of the picture. Just take it around my landscape there, my hill and land next to it. And then we can just pop some of this back in amongst the clouds if we want to. So just lighten it up a little bit. A bit more variety to the sky. Those brush strokes can stay nice and rough on there. And with the clouds, going back to my what size is this? It's series 4 long flat brush. I'm just going to increase the shadows underneath these clouds a little bit. We've got this sort of browny mix, and I might just go in with a little bit of a purpley mix as well, just to give a bit more shadow. I'm using my raw sienna. So we're just going to again add some depth to these clouds, not covering up everything I've got already, and again some fairly loose brush strokes just going in there, keeping that sort of browny colour, but again a bit more shadow. So that's a bit of French ultramarine, a little touch of alizarin, a little bit of raw sienna. Just go in underneath these clouds, give them a bit more depth, make them feel a bit more rounded. I think that's what we're looking for. So just pushing some of that back into the creaminess we've got already. And again, if you want, you can maybe just drag a bit across the horizon, just on the far part of the sky. Not sure that works. We'll take that out again. There we are, a bit more character already. So just the fun thing I want to do really is just to start to introduce some of the lighter parts of the sky, lighter parts of the cloud, sorry. So I'm just going to go back in with some of this mid-range we've got and just put a few brush strokes back in over some of that shadow area we've got. And again, you want some quite distinct brush strokes at this stage. You just want to think about the clouds going mainly sort of horizontally across your board. And then we're going to go much lighter again. Never going to be pure white, so there's a little bit of raw sienna, a little touch of our cerulean blue in there, and we'll start with these ones in the distance. So just a little touch of extra highlight for those ones, because we want them to be a bit further into the distance, so not stand out quite so much. And then as we come forward, we're just going to add some. This is hopefully where the clouds start to come to life. So just add some of this quite thick impasto white mix to the clouds. But don't think about sort of rounded tops. Just think about those sort of horizontal brush marks you've been putting in, and keeping the clouds fairly rough in terms of the way you paint them. So it looks like the sort of wind's breaking them up as they blow across. And again, you can just put some other brush marks in, just to give an idea of little bits of broken cloud. Just a little bit on this one. But again, not every cloud needs to have the same level of detail. You want them to look like they're, some are bigger clouds, some are smaller clouds, and obviously paint them accordingly. So we're coming up to these sort of ones that are the bigger ones at the top of the sky. So we want some quite bold brush marks with these. Again, not worrying too much about creating particular cloud shapes, just an idea of these clouds with created by the brush strokes you're putting on. So that this impasto paint going on, and the sort of clouds just scudding across the sky. Don't be tempted to overwork them. You want them to look fairly loose with this type of sky going on. I'm just going to reintroduce a little bit more of this raw sienna shadow. I think a bit too much of that's been lost, so it's going to go back in with some of that and just blend some of that back into the clouds. Sort of slightly broken bottoms to them maybe. But not too much detail going on, so pop that back in. Right, so I think we're pretty much there with the clouds. There's just a couple of areas. It's got a bit dirty down here where I tried to put a darker cloud in. So I'm just going to tidy that up, going back to my thicker brush again with my cerulean and a little bit of raw sienna. I just want to just lighten it up under these bottom clouds a little bit. Okay, and I might just put a couple more quite thick bits of impasto white just on these, just even get a couple of really big bits of paint on, just to give an idea of these clouds being the dominant ones in our painting. So just a couple of bits there, the wind taking them across. So a little tiny bit of blue going on with these because they're slightly nearer ones. And there we are. It's a very quick way to paint quite a vibrant summer sky with our clouds scudding across, and I hope you've enjoyed that.